All right, this is Brent Marvick with BP Kitchen Equipment, and we have here a 2020 Bizerba GSP slicer. The slicer is overall in good condition. Has a little bit of signs of wear and tear, again, just on the corners a little bit. Scratch right there. Most of the cosmetic damage is normally done to the corner of the slicers. Could be during shipping. To be honest, I'm not really sure, but we see it all the time. This does have a little bit of markings around there. It looked like whoever had the slicer before, they actually removed this and then replaced it for some reason. Maybe it was this whole arm. I'm not totally sure. But we went through and we made sure that the spacings were in here. It was missing on another slicer that we did recently. There's a little bit of wear right there from this touching down and just wearing back and forth. But yeah, overall the slicer is in pretty good shape. It does have a used blade cover, but honestly it's in really good condition. You can see here that it doesn't have a whole lot of markings at all. Slight scratch, about right there. The blade's in pretty good shape. The things we actually did to the slicer was we actually had to replace the blade because it had a chip in it, so it wasn't cutting correctly. And lastly, we had to put on a new plastic cover because this one was missing one, as well as a foot. And we also replaced the power cord with a replacement that we have. Here, I'll show you the operation. If you're watching this video and never really seen the slicer operate, it's really easy, real simple. It's just a gravity feed. So you put whatever product is in, whatever product you're trying to slice, whether it's meat or veggies or something else, just right in there. And you put this grip right on top and it pushes it down. And then right now we have a exposed blade. So we're at the 2mm mark. And then just run it back and forth. So that's how Bizerba slicers operate. But if you're watching this video, you probably already know how these slicers work. So the question is, why buy from BP Kitchen Equip? We service all of our parts before we sell it. Everything that we get, we refurbish. So we only do two things right now, these Bizerba slicers. I've done these for about 2 years, and we do Hobart HDI scales. My business partner Connor takes care of that. And everything we sell is refurbished, covered by a 120-day warranty. And yeah, it will come to you in really good shape. I test the electrical. These don't actually have a ton of electrical as compared to some of our other slicers, but there is a motherboard down here. I make sure that the power to the motherboard is enough. I actually run a voltmeter, make sure 180 volts is getting to it. Then I test the fuse. I make sure this board isn't fried or anything like that. In this case, we're all good. But we did need to replace the power cord because it was pretty frayed. Something else to do is I check all the mechanical for these machines. The mechanical you wouldn't think it's that important, but it actually is. Behind this, there's a grooved cam. Those are often shattered. This one's good. We make sure that that's all mechanical pieces, underneath here specifically. Just lift this up. So I get back in here, most of the action's right up where my fingers are at, and just make sure that everything's working as it should from Bizerba. If any parts are broken, I replace them. We also, while we're at it, we go in and we lubricate everything. Here's one example of that. These, I couldn't tell you why, probably because Bizerba under lubricates them, but these remnant holders, after 2 to 3 years, they always lock up. We always get them, and that is the, they're really stiff, and that's basically what you can do with them. We make sure that everything's lubricated. All the lubrication we use is Bizerba OEM stuff. So this is OEM Bizerba grease. We use OEM Bizerba machine oil for this rod, as well as a rod underneath that this full carriage moves back and forth on. We lubricate the grooved cam behind here, as well as all the mechanisms for moving this gauge plate back and forth. That's all done with H1 Bizerba OEM grease. We really do take care of these things. We make sure that while it is a used machine, I refurbish it to make sure that it will work just as well as a new machine would, as you would get from Bizerba. Something else that I do, I make sure that these machines are sharp. So as you'll see here, this blade is spinning. And let's cut this at 5 millimeters. I make sure that this blade will come to you sharp enough to easily cut a sheet of paper, as you can see here. We do that just to make sure that the machine that you get will be a long-lasting machine. The blade doesn't have any chip, and just right as you get it and pull out of the crate, it's ready to rock and roll for you. Something else we do if you're a business owner, you'd be interested in this, is probably the safety mechanisms. So, yeah, let me start with this first. So what that means is, as you get it from Bizerba, you loosen this back here. This carriage can move back. It's really good for cleaning. At the end of the day, whenever you've been using this for a couple hours, you can get in here, move this gauge plate. You can just come in here with a wet rag and clean it off, and just make sure that everything's working well for you. One of the problems with buying a used slicer is that this blade will be exposed whenever it's supposed to be recessed. What we do is we make sure that basically your employees will have a pretty hard time cutting themselves if they go in here and try to clean it. What I do is I make sure that at 0, this blade, what it should be doing is it should be setting 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters below the gauge plate. So it's actually recessed a little bit. That's how they come from Bizerba, and I make sure that these are just restored to their factory safe settings. What that means is that as long as this blade is at 0, you won't be able to, or your employees won't be able to cut yourself. It's also beneficial because as long as this arm is back, you actually can't move this. So as long as this arm is back, your employees will not be able to cut yourself. Benefit to that, the moment that the arm goes back down, say I want to cut something at 5 millimeters, this arm no longer goes back. You just make sure that Bizerba's safety standards are upheld. One of the problems with buying used equipment is that isn't always the case. I often get them as we buy them shipped. I often get them in this blade up here, down to like, sometimes halfway or even all the way. This blade is actually fully exposed. It's really dangerous. We just want to make sure that, yeah, I mean, when you get it, you can operate it just as you would from Bizerba. Let's see here. I also make sure I actually calibrate this dial right here. So I make sure these numbers actually correlate. They're not just some arbitrary numbers. So this blade should be sitting at 5 millimeters right now. I make sure that that is actually as accurate as possible. What I do is I focus on the low end. So I make sure that half is a half, 1 is 1, and 3 is 3. And then I make sure that 5, 10, all the way up to 22 is actually somewhat reasonably accurate. But we mainly focus on this lower end. We mainly make sure that when it's at 0, it is actually at 0. Going back to the safety mechanisms, this blade is currently spinning, as you can see by this light. I make sure that whenever this blade does go to 0, it does in fact turn off. Just the safety mechanism that Bizerba has. So you can see that light right there. The moment it goes to 0, it automatically turns off. Let me think here. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to sell you anything that's just tested, wiped down, works, quote unquote. We truly do service all of our pieces of equipment and make sure that it's going to work for you when you get it. Each slicer takes me anywhere from 3 to 7 hours. These manuals take me a little bit less, so it's about 3 to 4 hours. And we just go through and we make sure that you receive a high quality product. Something we also just recently started doing is actually cover every bit of this anodized aluminum in a food safe coating that forms a protective coat. Reason that we do that is because on older slicers, you'll actually notice that right in here, right along here, right on the bottom of on the bottom of the carriage right here, you'll notice that some slicers have a white film. So sometimes on the gauge plate, that white film is actually the minerals from water seeping into the metal and hardening it. It's one of the problems with anodized aluminum is that it soaks up water quite a bit easier. So what I do is I just spray a protectant down just to make sure that your Bizerba slicer will not have that, and it'll look really good when it comes to you. As I said before, all of our slicers are backed by 120-day warranty. We stand behind our work. Yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My name is Brent Marvick. My number is 720-334-0129. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you. Hope you have a good day.